welcome back to the Winning Play Podcast. I'm Drew James here with my co-host Rob Hugh. We've got Kendall out on a bye week this week. We're breaking down week 5 in the NFL, and we're going to look at some picks and predictions for week 6. First up, we're going to start with the breaking news today. New York Jets firing head coach Robert Sala. He was escorted from the building by security this morning. The Jets making a change after their big loss in London to the Vikings. Rob, does this help the Jets? Are they now in a better position going forward to the playoffs? I know we haven't seen who the new coach is yet, but what's your take on where they go from here?
Well, I didn't think the defense was necessarily the problem. I'm looking more towards the offense. So I guess they must have just thought the dysfunction started at the top. And I was a little surprised to see this morning. Not that I thought that, he may have made it till next year, but I definitely wasn't expecting to see him not make it back from London.
Yeah, it's odd. It seems to me, I don't have the stats of this news just came out, but it seems like every year some coach goes to London, loses, and doesn't make the trip home with the team. London seems to be the NFL's graveyard for failing coaches. I do think the Jets needed to make a change. Robert Sala era had not been working. The Nathaniel Hackett era should probably end as well, if we're being honest. You've spent all this money. You've got Aaron Rodgers. Your time is now. I don't blame them for making this move. I think it is pretty shocking coming here week 6 of the season. The Jets are already ready to make the change, but it says something about the hopes or expectations they have for this team, especially if they're out there maybe trying to land a Devontae Adams via trade.
To me, the only thing I can really think of is that, they've already given Aaron Rodgers so much power in this, and so I'm wondering if maybe there was friction there between that relationship, because we know that Hackett and him are good. So from the outside, even though it looks to us like the offense is the problem, I mean, maybe there was just more of that internal strife. But
I think definitely the offense is a problem, but you've also got a coach whose record is something like 20 and 36 over 4 years with the
absolutely.
team. Again, you've got all these high priced players. It looks like your offense and defense should be playing a little better than they are. You'd have to think the Nathaniel Hackett change is coming as well. But it does keep the Jets in the conversation for at least another week. But let's move on to some of the
Right.
bigger storylines of week 5. First off, we've got Minnesota and KC kind of dominating the league at 5-0. Minnesota, I think it's trailed for a total of 3 minutes on the season this year, one of the most dominant starts we've ever seen by a team. Whereas Kansas City has kind of found a way to win each game. They haven't really looked like they're overly dominant. They haven't looked like world beaters, but here they are 5-0, the two-time defending champs. Hard to question them at this point. Which team do you trust more going forward, the Vikings or the Chiefs?
Well, I trust the Chiefs more in the sense of they just had so many important games over these last several years, and so I don't see them panicking ever. And actually, last night in that game against the Saints, I think they looked the best they've looked all season. Kareem Hunt, and they fed Kelsey, and they got Worthy the plays and stuff. But I love this Minnesota defense. I want to give them their flowers because I think Flores has their defense absolutely humming. Sam Darnold's been coming out the gate. Now they do have the Aaron Jones injury, and that's like their Achilles heel. That I think if he misses time, that's where I think the team. I'm worried for them to struggle a little bit, and they have a little bit of this Jekyll and Hyde first half, second half production and play. So we'll have to figure that out. But I love both these teams. I'm a big believer in complementary football, and they've been coming out ahead and then allowing Flores' defense to hum. So I think both are very good and legitimate teams this year.
Yeah, the Chiefs have come out, like you said, this was probably their most impressive game of the year. Their defense literally looks like it's coming together. We got throwback games from Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster. And I've got a really bold prediction for this week. I'm giving my 100% lock guarantee that both the Chiefs and the Vikings make it out of this week undefeated as well. I know it's a big, bold move, but both teams on bye weeks this week. So we're going to be looking at two undefeated teams after week 6 in the NFL. Maybe the 72 Dolphins should start getting scared. I don't know. But both of these teams now get to look back at the first 5 games, know where they are, and really take a breather and see how to refresh going further down into the season. However, two teams both needing a win here, trying to show their dominance in the AFC North. We had a big shootout between the Bengals and the Ravens. Bengals come out, take a big lead. holding a 10-point lead with 5 minutes left, and Lamar making some crazy plays to bring the Ravens back. Is this the end of it for the Bengals? Are they done now? Is this their normal early season swoon? And then for the Ravens, does this put them firmly up at the top of the NFL, or is this just a story of they own the Bengals now? And do we trust that going forward?
Well, this past week actually was probably the best overall week of football as far as exciting games and things like that. This one was a crazy shootout. There's another game we'll talk about next that was also a fun game to watch. Look, man, I had Joe Burrow coming out. I had the Bengals winning the division and Joe Burrow doing the MVP. Joe Burrow's doing his part. He's putting up what should be, MVP level numbers, and this Bengals defense is just it's just letting the other team score 30 plus points, and kind of ruin that. Now Lamar played so well in this game. He spread the ball around. He was throwing targets to a third tight end, which I'm sure made Andrew's owners sick again. Um, and Jamar Chase is gonna come up and give you those blow up games, and he's looking like he's in the conversation for one of those wide receiver ones of the year as well as it goes through. So this game was great for fantasy. It's great for entertainment. The Ravens definitely needed this win, but wow, man, the Bengals can't buy a win right now, and I didn't pick their defense to take such a step back right now. They have a lot to figure out, and I'm not exactly sure what they're gonna do. It's a lot of the it's a lot of the same personnel from last year, so I'm not exactly sure where the execution flaws are coming from.
Yeah, the
But yeah,
Bengals have allowed 34 points or more in each of the last three games. They've dropped 26, 38, 34, and 31 the last 4 weeks. Their defense looks like a sieve. And it kind of goes to the problem with the Bengals, which is you can't slow walk into the season. Every year they seem to start off 0-2, 0-3. You dig yourself that hole. Then you lose a game like this that you should have won. You had some questionable clock management towards the end of the game there in division. It's really hurtful. Now I know the Bengals kind of have a couple easier games coming up against the Giants and the Browns. That might be a get right part of their schedule. But once again, Cincinnati digging themselves this big hole. Whereas the Ravens kind of changing the narrative they've had for years. That Lamar can't come through in the clutch. Fourth quarter, Lamar drops off. Well, Lamar took over this game, especially in the fourth quarter. His one stiff arm to the throw was one of the coolest plays in the NFL so far this year. The Ravens have made a statement the last 2 weeks, but then as we're going to get to later, big game coming up this week against the Washington Commanders to see if they can actually solidify themselves as one of the top teams in the league, or if they're sitting there at 500 with some questions here to answer.
I will say the Ravens defense is something to monitor moving forward. They're the only team besides the Carolina Panthers to allow 25 plus in all four games. So even though the Ravens have had kind of a very impressive set of 2 weeks here, they went 0-2 to start the year and then kind of have built up momentum and steam, and Derrick Henry looks good. I will say I'm still hesitant to really give them great season-long projections because I want to see them play the game of football that they want to play more consistently and more often in this game because I don't think they're going to want to have to put up 41 points in a lot of games and put it on Lamar like this. So moving forward, I think it's just interesting to see if they can get that consistency down.
We had another crazy shootout this on Sunday. The Jaguars and the Colts going back and forth. Colts looked like they were out of it. All of a sudden, Joe Flacco and Alec Pierce put on a show, bring them right back, and then the Jaguars still pull it out in the end. I don't know how good either of these teams are. I don't know that we're going to be talking about them much late into the season, but what a fun game to watch. What'd you take away from the Jags Colts?
Well, I mean, the Jaguars are getting it together a little bit. They've put up two offensive performances in a row, and this game all of a sudden out of nowhere went crazy. Joe Flacco, who's barely younger than Anthony Richardson's mom, was scrambling and running out there looking like Mahomes and
That
the
23
best
yard
of them.
scramble was crazy.
He looks fast, man. He looks fast. He was able to go from opposite sides of the field and get out of bounds. It was pretty
Lamar
impressive.
Flacco, man.
And your guy Tank, we'll talk about him later, but yeah, your guy Tank Bigsby showed up big, and then all of a sudden, Joe Flacco and Alec Pierce, they had those huge bombs, and they were right back in it, and it kind of looked like both teams didn't know how to close the game out. The Jaguars tried to lose the game even when they had it, so It was very exciting at the end, you know. And I kind of have been saying for the last couple of weeks, the Jaguars are building momentum. They're about to get Ingram back. I think they're gonna be figuring things out here. Tank, I think they're gonna get more touches to him. We'll see what happens with Travis Etienne, but yeah, I think to take from this is once again Flacco did it again, but I think in a season long situation, I think you want to talk about the Jaguars kind of slowly kind of getting their offensive identity back and putting together some more consistent performances.
Yeah, I think for the Colts, the big question starts to become when Anthony Richardson gets healthy, are we still riding with Flacco there? Flacco has given that team a lot more life on offense. Would it be the worst thing in the world to have Anthony Richardson sit behind him for a year and learn and kind of improve without putting his health on the chopping block? It's hard when you're on a team where it's clear that you move the ball so much better with one quarterback than the other to bring the other one back in. Are you at risk of losing the team there? So I think the Colts are going to definitely have some questions to ask if Flacco keeps these performances up going forward. If not, Flacco could be a trade candidate. There are other teams looking for a starter, although I'm not sure the Colts are going to want to let such a quality backup go when you've got a quarterback with injury issues.
Yeah, I will say Steichen came out and did make a declarative statement that Anthony Richardson is their QB1 when he comes back. But that's absolutely a conversation that we're gonna have, you know, outside of that organization. And actually, you know, this is the reason why the Browns didn't re-sign Flacco. They knew that it would be a constant conversation over and over and over again with Deshaun, and they didn't want that. So, you know,
I'm
it
pretty
is
sure,
something for us
actually,
to.
I've heard the news that that's why the Browns didn't sign me this year. They were worried about the competition between me and Deshaun Watson. Really, the Browns can't have any quarterback on the roster without the fans clamoring for him to take over from Deshaun Watson. Another big storyline this week: rookie quarterbacks. We talked about Jaden Daniels in excess last week. I would say he should be the front runner for the MVP at this point. If he's not, watch this game this weekend against the Ravens. If the Commanders win this game, I don't see how Jaden Daniels doesn't become the front runner for MVP. But you also had Caleb Williams looking good, Bo Nix getting the win, and he looks like he's starting to get comfortable there. Who's your favorite of these rookie quarterbacks going forward, or do you think they can all keep producing down the line?
Well, it's going to be the boring answer because I think everybody's favorite is Jaden Daniels. I mean, he's lighting it up, but I do want to give Caleb Williams a shout out. You know, he's taking some heat because he came into what we all thought was a great situation. Now, the O line is kind of what I thought it would be, and I was a little worried about, but in general, he's got the weapons and all this stuff. But Caleb Williams was throwing the ball over the yard. He was getting DJ Moore his targets and really kind of dicing that defense up this last week. And he's kind of slowly and steadily gotten better. And he had so many expectations on him to come right out the gate and do that. And with Jaden especially using his legs and looking good right out the gate already in a different way, it kind of put even more pressure on Caleb. But you know, Caleb's kind of coming on, and by the end of the year, he's going to be a guy. He has all the talent in the world. So I want to give him the shout out. And then Bo Nix and that Broncos defense, you know, he's not making game breaking mistakes, and they won as well. No, I mean, you know, the Raiders and benching Gardner Minshew, you know, it was what it was. But Bo Nix is putting wins together, and that's all you can ask for when you have a rookie QB.
And the same thing with the Bears. They're playing against the Panthers. It's not the most impressive team to be going up against, but Caleb Williams with 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, another 35 on the ground. He's definitely starting to look comfortable. One thing I noticed was that both of his touchdowns this week were coming on second and third reads. He's getting through his progressions, which is something you really like to see from a rookie quarterback. This, I feel like, is looking like it could be one of the better quarterback draft classes we've had in a long time, especially if Bo Nix comes together. And if, in my opinion, if the Patriots can resist the urge to stick Drake May into the starting spot with this garbage offensive talent that they have, don't put Drake May as a starter. Let him sit. It's okay. Somebody needs to be talking to the Patriots GM and taking his finger off the trigger there. But these rookies are coming up way more prepared than we've seen. Like I said, we've never seen a quarterback in the MVP conversation the way Jaden Daniels has planned himself. But now you've got Caleb Williams coming on. I think 10 years down the line, we might be looking at this quarterback class of 2024 and marveling at all the studs that came out of it. I do want to get to, let's go through just a couple of these injuries we saw in the NFL this week. Last night, Monday night, Derek Carr goes down with an oblique injury. We don't know the extent of a lot of these injuries yet. One thing I have to think that could affect is the Saints' pursuit of Devontae Adams. Is he wanting to go to the Saints if Derek Carr is out? Does that factor into the trade talks there? We also had Aaron Jones, as you mentioned, with a hip injury. Again, we don't know how long he'll be out, but we've seen in the past he misses multiple games in a year. And how is that going to affect the Vikings? Devon Achane for the Dolphins goes down with a concussion. They've got a bye week this week, so hopefully he'll be back when they get back in 2 weeks. Xavier Legette, one of my favorite fantasy pickups this year, who was just starting to come on, goes down in the first quarter with a shoulder injury. Nico Collins, who's looking like he might be the wide receiver one in football, goes out with a hamstring injury, doesn't come back. He looks like he might miss a week or two. And then we've got Joe Mixon, still questionable for week 6. Kind of feels like at this point Joe Mixon's might just be questionable for the rest of his career. I don't know that you can really count on him as a healthy running back going forward. So let's transition into fantasy now. Uh, Nico Collins, we just mentioned, got injured, but man, he's looking like wide receiver one in the league up until he headed to the locker room there. How worried should we be about that injury? How pumped are you for him going forward? If you're a Nico Collins order, are you holding? Are you trying to form a trade here? What's the plan?
The man just ran too fast for his biology. He just tore his own hamstring. He actually did what Mike Evans has done a lot of times throughout his career, which is get an amazing bomb touchdown and then come up a little gimpy and get hurt. But I mean, I'm if I'm Nico, I mean, I'm if I'm a Nico owner, I'm holding. I mean, it's gonna be maybe 2 weeks, and that hurts obviously, but if you've had Nico, hopefully the rest of your team has been performing and you can afford maybe a loss or two in this time. But I can't imagine, unless someone wants to give me Jamar plus, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to do Jamar plus somebody, but anybody in that realm, you're absolutely holding. I mean, it's a great offense, top guy. In those 5 minutes he played, he looked like he was going to be wide receiver one again on the week. Him and Jamar may have vied for that. So, yeah, I don't think there's any question about what you're doing with him. You just put him on the bench and wish he comes back
Yeah,
sooner.
I think he had 2 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown in, like you said, the five
Yeah.
minutes that he played. For where you drafted him, I don't think you're ever going to get a price that's worth it at this point. But he looks like if he can stay healthy, that's a guy who's going to be in a lot of championship lineups in fantasy going forward. Another guy who go performing way above his draft position is the Panthers' Chuba Hubbard. I love that. I've had him in a couple leagues for a while, but this offense, man, cooking with the red rifle. Is Chuba Hubbard's production for real? Is this something that stays? I know we've got Jonathan Brooks maybe back in a few weeks. Are you looking to get rid of Chuba Hubbard now before that running back switch comes?
Yeah, Dave Canales, he wants to run this power run offense, right? And we talked about this a couple times, I think, or I have, which is he spent over $100 million getting interior offensive linemen just to implement his scheme because it's always been what he wants to do. He comes from the Shane Waldron coaching tree. So Chuba's really taking advantage of this opportunity, though. He looks great, and he's a guy we kind of perennially overlook. Um, and he's been putting back-to-back 100-yard performances, and he's allowing Canales to really do what he wants to do in a football game. For now, I kind of see Chuba as a guy you want to sell high because I do know that first round pick is coming, and even when or first round talent, Jonathan Brooks is coming. Even when it's going to take some time to ease him in, eventually he is going to be the guy. So we'll have to see how that split backfield goes moving forward. But yeah, I see Chuba as being able to sustain this at least for the next month.
Yeah, I feel like Chuba had 13 carries for 97 yards this week. You look at those 7.5 yards of carry, and you think, why wasn't he running more? Well, because they were so far behind. But it's nice that even in a
Right.
game script where the Panthers are just getting murdered, that he's still getting his fantasy points. You've got to be happy with him in your starting lineup at this point. Whereas, let's move over to the Packers. Everyone's worldwide number one waiver pickup last week, Dontavian Wicks, kind of didn't do anything at all. 2 catches for 20 yards. Are you still high on Wicks? Is this an outlier, or is this just actually kind of what the Packers are going to look like going forward?
Well, to be honest, if you watched last week's game, he was doing some of these things as well. They missed on like their first six connections. He's an incredible separator, and the advanced metrics actually support that. Versus man press, I mean, he had one of the best separation scores in the game. Still, it's just he just needs work at the jug machine, and I don't say that flippantly. I don't say that as if that's a small issue, but you want to see that that he is actually being open and allowing Love to get there, and hopefully he can get his hands to come together and hold on to that football. I will say that a little bit of this is also Jordan Love's inconsistency. Him and Sam Darnold in that same division are kind of opposites. Sam Darnold's been coming out super hot out the gate and cooling off real hard in the second half, and Love has kind of been coming out the gate the last 2 weeks now, really rusty. It looks like we gave him a break last week because he was coming back from injury, but he did it again this week where he comes out real slow and then in the second half turns it on and they got the win. But so we'll just have to see moving forward. I wouldn't be regretful if I was a Wicks owner because he's gonna have an opportunity here. But I think it's, to be honest, I think the person that's happiest of all this is Romeo Dobbs, because I think even though they got the win, they missed him. They missed that security blanket there, and they were struggling for the whole first half without him.
They did. No Green Bay receiver with more than 4 catches this week. I know we talked last week. I was not sold completely on Jaden Reed, although he had an amazing catch this week. It just doesn't look like an offense that's going to consistently be finding the same receiver for 10, 11 catches. They spread the ball around a lot. That may solidify more here going forward now that Christian Watson is out for a bit. Maybe they can gel with the squad they have. But does Dobbs come back? Is he still a trading block candidate now? There's lots of questions in Green Bay. I'm Other than Tucker Kraft, I'm ready to kind of sell on these Green Bay receivers and get out of this team's offense while the getting's good, because I don't know which of these guys is going to show up every week with a huge game and who's going to have 2 catches for 20 yards. Another one saw some potential problems this week. Cowboys, Dak and CeeDee Lamb kind of having words on the sideline. CeeDee, without not having his best game of the year, is that a product of the rain delay, the field conditions, the Cowboys playing against the Steelers defense, or is this a serious issue the Cowboys are facing going forwards?
Well, I have CD in our league of records, so I've been monitoring this and watching every snap of Cowboy football, and it's been a little concerning to me in general. CD, you got him in the top five picks of a draft most likely, and he's been up and down. He's really only had two good games and two busts, and then one like okay game. And you know what? You're watching it and you're seeing that these guys aren't exactly best friends either, so it doesn't really help that. But I will say I went back and looked at the 2023 season because I remember that this pairing, this stack for guys that had Dak and CD came on strong and won a lot of people championships. So I went and looked at a game by game basis in 2023, and they had a early to mid season bye, and before the bye, CD Lamb was looking a lot like this. He was up and down and not really performing a lot, and I think I remember now that people were pretty upset and a little worried about CD there, and Jerry was coming out and doing the Jerry thing where he kind of throws shade at having the top receivers and all this stuff. But then they had their bye week, and you go and look, and that's where they started having the 30 plus point performances. He was more consistent overall, touching 18, 19 points at like the lower ends, and then going 25 to 30, sometimes 40 points for CD. So we've seen this before, and as a CD Lamb owner, that kind of gives me hope that they'll figure it out. I think Rico Dowdle coming on. We'll talk about him later, but Rico Dowdle coming on can only help this offense be more sustainable. I'm a big believer that overall offenses having more sustained drives and more point potential is good for everybody. So I think they're gonna figure this out. And Tolbert came on, my guy. I made the keeping it real about him, but I think they're going to have options on the passing ends, and Rico's going to come on, and this offense is going to slowly get together.
I wouldn't be too worried about CD at this point. Again, this game was in a 2 hour rain delay, wet field, playing against a defense we both think is one of the better defenses in the NFL this year. And he still had 9 targets, 5 catches for 62 yards. I know that's not what you drafted him for in the top three of your fantasy draft. He's going to have down weeks. I think, like you said, those are going to be less and less as the season goes on. If anything, I'm out there trying to buy on CeeDee Lamb right now. I'm trying to find a CeeDee Lamb owner who's shaky and I'm throwing somebody out there, Brian Thomas Jr. or somebody that looks really hot right now, and adding CD for the playoff run because I do think he's gonna step up his production as the week goes forward. But let's use that to get into some of our bigger fantasy risers this week. A lot of guys on the come up. Offense is starting to come together in the NFL. One guy that finally is looking the part that we've hoped for him to look for the last couple of years is Drake London, putting up a 35-point fantasy game on Thursday night against the Bucks. I mean, everybody on the Falcons was eating, with the exception of one guy we'll talk about later in our faller section. Are you buying Drake London? Is he now moved into the wide receiver one territory, or is this just a blip along the road and he goes back to kind of boomer bust?
To defend my Bucks, we were missing basically our entire spine of our defense. But Drake London, I will say Drake London, yes, I saw him as a buy low early first half and then second half overall with these Falcons weapons. I see them all coming on. I've been a big Kirk rider for a couple years, and he can really help a fantasy team for sure with those receivers. So I see Drake London absolutely being. I wouldn't say he's one of the premier wide receiver ones in the league, but between him being the wide receiver one on that team and having Kirk, a gunslinger, back there to really get him the ball, I absolutely see him being a valuable asset moving forward, and he's going to get the targets. So
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, as long as Kirk Cousins is the quarterback there, there's a lot of fantasy value to be had in the Falcons. They look like they're more willing to air it out this year. Their defense still looks like they're going to have to air it out this year a bit. So
right.
I'd be high on Drake London going forward. Another guy I really like that stood up this week was DJ Moore. 2 touchdowns, 8 targets, 5 catches, 100 yards. Looking like the DJ Moore we've known for years. He hasn't gone anywhere. He's still a stud, and it's looking like his quarterback is getting comfortable. I think we got to look out for DJ Moore going forward. He's a guy you don't want to be playing against.
Yeah, when I think about DJ Moore, I kind of compare it to the Houston wide receiver trio in that offense, and not because it's the exact same, but actually in the ways it's similar and different. You have the three big receiver names on that team like Houston, but I think CJ Stroud is further along obviously than Caleb Williams. So you're talking about consistency of targets and accuracy of those potentials. I see DJ Moore as being not as consistent as I would think Drake London's gonna be, but I think as the season unfolds and Caleb continues to get better and more consistent, you're gonna see DJ be the guy. He had a really fun touchdown to watch, a dime by Caleb, and that's good news for all those guys moving forward. Although I will say, like, I don't think Roma Dunze is going away either, so I'm a little more hesitant about DJ and the consistency there because I do think even more than the Texans, it's going to be a little bit like one receiver one day, one receiver the other day type of thing. But moving forward, if you're a DJ Moore owner, you have to breathe a sigh of relief a little bit.
Well, another guy on the Bears to look at who has come on, especially since Kendall called him out a couple weeks ago, is DeAndre Swift. Last 2 weeks, he's been running back two and running back one in fantasy. This week, going over 120 yards is and a touchdown. Is DeAndre Swift now a top tier running back? Is this a flash in the pan you're trying to sell now and get out of the DeAndre Swift business?
It's hard to fully buy into this, right? We've watched this guy run for years, and if he doesn't have wide open holes in the past, it's hard to see that talent translate to production. But I will say he's doing this the last 2 weeks when he's also not even the goal line back. They're giving Roshan Johnson all of those goal line carries. So, there are reasons to believe that this could possibly be real, especially as this Bears offense kind of gets better and better and chugs along. So, I'm willing to be wrong on the earlier predictions and kind of like just monitor it moving forward without hammering them again like we did the last couple weeks. But this
Yeah.
week was really a great week for running backs in general. You talked about DeAndre Swift, and while there were some other wide receivers like T. Higgins and Zay Flowers that went off, I mean, overall the running back room this year had a lot of guys perform and uh, and hit the waiver wire predictions that we'll talk about later. But Rico Dowdle, we got to give him a shout out. It's Jerry and the team has been kind of behind him, and we didn't really know what the Cowboys were doing this year when they didn't grab another running back and stuff like that. But he looks really useful and really serviceable. I wouldn't say he looks elite, but he looks good enough in this offense to in both the passing and the running game to sustain this because he is the guy. There's no competition here for who's the guy in that backfield.
Oh, it's not even close anymore. I think Rico had 20 carries this week to 6 for Zeke Elliott. And he also had 2 catches for 27 yards and the game winning touchdown. Clearly, he's the guy to go to. We knew when they picked up Zeke, that's not a long term answer. But Rico, like you said, is looking the part. They're going to continue to run him. He's definitely no worse than an RB2 going forward. Another running back, though, that stepped up this week, looking like it was 2017. My boy Kareem Hunt. Luckily, grabbed him on waivers in a couple weeks this week. I'd have to look at the official scoreline here to see how many carries he had, but something like 20 carries. Really took over the Monday night game in his first week as a starter there on the Chiefs. How high are you on Kareem? Is this a rest of season thing? And would we be worried about Pacheco if you're a Pacheco owner when he comes back? Is he going to be splitting more carries with Hunt if Hunt keeps this up?
Well, when Pacheco comes back, there will absolutely be some split carries and split backfields. I just don't know when that will happen. I don't know when Pacheco's coming back, and I don't think they do either. Kareem looked refreshed, man. I mean, the last time we saw him, he had clearly lost a step. Now, you never know kind of the chronic injuries these guys kind of pick up as they don't have any breaks from the NFL season, and he's had quite a break at this point. So he came back looking fresh last night. He was, I wouldn't say he looked extremely fast, but he looked decisive and still had the vision and the power. And he was knifing through on these inside runs and picking up chunks every play. And he looked fast enough. He looked faster than the last time that we saw him. And we know that every team he's ever been on, he becomes the coach's favorite red zone back. So no one's going to get the best touches over Kareem in this offense than him. And I think he really allowed the Chiefs last night to look the best they have all season long. So I'm a big fan of his potential over the next like 7-8 weeks. I don't know when Pacheco's coming back, but that's going to change the situation a little bit then. But for now, I absolutely think this is a guy you just instantly start and pay dividends.
And the official stat 28 touches for Kareem Hunt
Whew.
on Monday night. Just absolute ball hog. And then you've got another guy on the Chiefs giving us 2017 flashbacks. Juju Smith Schuster coming out 7 catches for 130 yards like he's been there the whole time. I know he's been in this system before, but can this be kept up? I know the Chiefs have talked about trading for a wide receiver. If that doesn't happen, is he just now the default wide receiver going forward? One thing I will say, he had a ball hit his hands that he batted up in the air that turned into a costly interception for the Chiefs. Other than that, couldn't imagine a better game for Juju coming out of the gate here.
Look, you get paid to catch the ball, so hit them in the hands, that tip up. But I will say, you and I were talking about this. Mahomes was inaccurate on a lot of these passes last night, in a way that you haven't really seen, and that was another one of those. But I was actually after this game, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go out and spend some fab on Juju because I just don't know who else they have. Now maybe they're gonna get D Hop or somebody else, but I just don't know who else they have. And he looked great. He actually legitimately looked great last night. However, I was looking at some quotes afterwards that had me be more hesitant. Where Mahomes, instead of talking him up and being like, yeah, I knew he could do it and all this stuff, it was more like, yes, Juju stepped up and moving forward, there are going to be a lot of guys to fill that spot. I mean, Mahomes, I'm paraphrasing here, but he quite directly said, there's going to be a guy every week that steps up, and he happened to step up, and he knew that he had done it before on this team, but it wasn't like the vote of confidence that you want to hear from him, or being like, I knew he could do it and I can't wait to do this again next week. It was none of that. It was more like, in this offense with our situation, guys are going to have to step up and it's going to be a different guy every week. So, I'm a little more hesitant. I'll throw a little bit of fab because why not, just to see, but it's not quite as confident as I was before looking into these quotes.
Yeah, I think you've gotta be riding the Juju train again. Like you said, who else do they have? But this Chiefs offense is going to be the Chiefs offense. He's going to have Mahomes. Kelsey's going to take the majority of the defense's attention every time. And Juju has shown before that he can produce in the right situation. If this is the right situation, I don't know what better wide receiver you're going to find on waivers at this point. We got another guy that I've been touting since week one. I think it's finally time we start to give Tank Bixby his due here. 13 carries, 101 yards, two touchdowns. And if you hear that screaming in the background, that is the sound of the Travis Etienne train running off the tracks. Only 6 carries this week. I do think ATN still has some value in PPR. Still had 6 catches for 43 yards. But if you're watching these Jaguars games, the eye test is pretty undeniable. Tank Bixby is the better runner here. He's hitting holes hard. He's running over guys. He's running past guys. He looks like a stud running back ready to go. And ATN kind of looks like he's lost a step. Either way, the comparison's not even close. Is Tank Bixby now the guy in Jacksonville? And can you finally really trust him in your starting lineup going forward in fantasy?
Yeah, some guys in football have like a battle mentality where the competition makes them better, and right now it just looks like Travis Etienne is folding under pressure as Tank really surges. Tank is a fun running back to watch, man. I mean, he's not the fastest guy, but he's fast enough and he's powerful. He'll run people over and make some spins and break tackles, and he looked great in this game and really allowed Jaguars to come out here with a win. I don't see how you don't continue to give him more carries. Now I wouldn't say he's automatically taken over the top spot. I think, they're still willing because of all the capital and the time they spent with ETN to move forward. And actually I would have thought that he'd be a bigger trade candidate if they actually lost this game last week instead of pulling out the win. So I'm a little bit more hesitant to say he's gone on that team, but Tank looks great. I happen to pick him up in our league of record, so I'm very happy about that. And I think moving forward, he's definitely a fun guy. I know next week I got Devon Achan and all that stuff, so I'm definitely putting Tank in and not really worrying about it.
Yeah, I think again, I think watching these games, you can't deny that Tank Bixby looks like a guy who's going to go out there and win you games, which is going to keep him on the field. Another
He
guy though
leads the
that
league in yards per carry.
another guy stepping up though that kind of coming from the backup position. Giants Tyrone Tracy coming out. 18 rushes for over 100 yards, 129 yards actually. His vision and speed look great. He's hitting holes hard. He's finding paths through the defense. Is he going to start eating into the carries when Singletary gets back? Or does he even take over that role down the line? What did you see in that game?
I saw a running back. I saw an NFL running back and a good NFL running back that's both a pass catching back and a run between the tackles. He looked great. He was decisive with his vision, making cuts. He was fast. I think going out of college, his draft profile, he already is a built-in pass catcher. So I think he lifted up this offense in a game where the Giants D line just absolutely destroyed the Seahawks O line, and that was really the difference in the game. But Tyrone Tracy looked really good, and Devin Singletary is kind of one of these guys that's a solid running back, but every backfield he's ever been in, he's never just held the lead over another back in that backfield. So Tyrone Tracy is absolutely going to be competing for snaps. I think especially if you're a dynasty owner, you are excited for the future of this team because he will be the RB1 next year, absolutely, and he will eat into snaps as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think if you're a dynasty owner, especially, you've got to make sure he's on your team. But even in a
Oh
redraft
yeah.
league, I think he's going to be a factor going forward. You have to, especially if you have Singletary, I'd be looking to pick him up. But he's a guy we'll talk about in our waiver section. Pretty much a must add at this point. Let's go on though to some of the guys who didn't perform so well. Some of our fantasy fallers this week, and I'm going to kick it off with one of your favorite Saints players, Chris Olave. Really disappointing owner so far this year. I know a lot of us were loving on Rashid Shaheed. He's performing really well. The Saints offense is still looking pretty good, but Chris Olave nowhere to be found this week. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, as a Bucks fan, I watch a lot of Saints games and keep up with division rivals, and to me, it's always been clear that Olave and Derek Carr's chemistry is an issue. They've never had good chemistry, and even when Shaheed was a smaller role player last year, they connected on such a higher percentage of their targets, and it just, the conversation right now has to be, is Shaheed the actual wide receiver one on this team right now? Because Olave is just, people have loved him. The advanced metrics community has loved Olave, what he's been doing despite the lack of high value targets and the wrong connection that him and Carr have. But for me personally, I've never been high on him in the fantasy world just because I haven't seen it. You know, it's been a lot of couple years of talking about he should be getting this, he should be getting this, and it hasn't happened. And last night was a big example. Now I will say, you know, the Chiefs probably did game plan against him more than they did Shaheed, but you know, you got to be nervous moving forward. And he kind of reminds me of another guy that we're going to talk about that's a faller, which is George Pickens. You know, George Pickens is another guy where it's like he should be breaking out. He should be breaking out. We think he's the guy. They traded away Deontay Johnson after they had beef or whatever. You know, Pickens throwing a little fits that he wasn't getting all the targets, and now he's the unquestioned wide receiver one on this team. And I guess you got to give him a little break because he has Justin Fields as the quarterback, but you know, he's getting called out by Cowboys defense players, things like that. I mean, you know, and I think you talked about it, his effort just isn't there. He looks like a guy that if he's not getting the ball all the time, you're not going to get the 100% version of him. So, what do you think about Pickens moving forward?
Yeah, I'd say the stat line is not as concerning as I think it looks. He still had 7 targets. The game again in delay, weather delay, and rainy and wet. But as you just mentioned, my problem with George Pickens is he looks like he's jogging. He does not look like he's playing full out. He doesn't look like he's mentally there with this team. And Mike Tomlin has shown that if you're not mentally there, he'll just find somebody to step up and take that spot. It's hard for me to value any fantasy player, especially a wide receiver that doesn't look like their head's totally in the game. Let alone that Steelers offense does not look that explosive. They're kind of winning games with their defense and playing close games. You don't really trust Justin Fields to make anybody a number one wide receiver at this point. But George Pickens looks like a guy that could be out in a trade. He could be getting some bench time. Who knows what's going to happen if he doesn't step up the effort, but not a guy that I'm liking to watch if he's on my team right now. We talked about Dontavian Wicks a little bit. He's a guy we were high on, came back to earth a little bit. We talked about CD Lamb, but what about DK Metcalf? Having a great year so far, but kind of a down week this week. Is that an outlier? Is he a problem going forward, or is this just a 1 week? Let's forget about it and move on with DK.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to mention him because he's capable of a game like this. But as a DK owner in a league, I'm not really concerned at all. I watched this Seattle Giants game, and the Giants' defensive line just absolutely destroyed the Seattle offensive line all game. It was completely disrupting anything that Seattle wanted to do on offense. I mean, Gino made the best out of it that he could. He had like 70 plus runs and a couple really nice scrambles and stuff, but DK wasn't able to get into rhythm, and obviously he didn't help himself because he did have a fumble, and that made it even worse. But you know, this Seattle offense. You know, I've been really high on them coming into the year, and I think they haven't even reached their ceiling yet. So I'm not worried about DK. JSN, you know, on the other side got his touchdown. You know, they're gonna trade who gets the touchdown as the weeks go in, but DK, I expect a bounce back game and another like 16 plus point performance next week. So I would not be worried about him.
Yeah, I'm not worried about DK either. Still led the wide receivers on that team in targets. Still at 455. Guys are going to have down weeks. You can't jump off the building every time he doesn't score 25. I'm not worried there at all. I'll tell you about a guy I am worried about after that Thursday night game. Bijan Robinson. Falcons putting up 36 points in a shootout. Bijan, kind of the only guy on that team who didn't eat. He did actually still average 5 yards a carry, only 12 carries, 60 yards, but he's just not looking like that explosive, game breaking guy we expected coming out of college, especially those of us who spent pick number 1 or 2 overall on him. What are you doing with Bijan? You can't get really the value out of him that you want at this point. Are you just riding with him until that goes better? Do you think he's going to come around, or is this really a serious problem the Falcons are dealing with?
Well, as a non-Bijan owner, it's easy for me to say I'm not worried about him because his usage is still so high, and I don't think he just lost the talent all of a sudden. So, I mean, you would think as this offense kind of gets it together, as Kirk starts clicking in, that overall, like I said, kind of a theme with offenses is being more sustainable and complementary to each other, so the point potential is higher. So I see that happening, and plus he's still managing, even when you watch the game, and it doesn't look good at all. He's still managing 10 plus points. So it's just hard because you got him so high, and he's not performing where you got him. And because of team structure, it's probably leading to losses. So as an owner, you're like, I need to win now. But season long, if you're able to maintain these wins, I would still hold on to him because you're just not going to get the value that you got him at. And if you're not a Bijan owner, I mean, if you can find somebody that's just so unhappy with him to trade, I would absolutely put him at the top of my list of a buy low candidate.
Well, what about another running back that was going in the top three here? Brees Hall looks really concerning. Now, we just got the news again. Robert Sala is out. As we've been recording here, the Jets have announced that their defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, is going to be the interim coach going forward. Could this coaching change help Brees snap out of this funk? Is there any hope there, or are we kind of screaming that the sky is falling if you're a Brees owner or a Jets fan?
I don't know if sky is falling is what I would say, but I mean, they didn't touch, solid leaving doesn't really touch what's going on with the offense right now. Hackett's still calling plays, and really Aaron Rodgers is essentially making all those executive decisions on the field. So I don't see Brees's usage or even production changing immediately after this. I think it's interesting that the DC was the one that got asked to be the head coach, and maybe he has a longer tenure with the team and things like that. But the problem with Brees is that under Zach Wilson, he was getting all these dump off passes, and even though we've seen in the past with Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones a lot of dump off passes, it seems like it's not really where he's going right now. He's not getting nearly the volume he had with Zach Wilson, and there's like a crazy stat that the Jets have scored as many points through this part of the season now with Aaron Rodgers as they did with Zach Wilson last year. So the offense is just dysfunctional right now, and I don't think eventually Aaron Rodgers is going to have to put some blame on his shoulders and not everybody else, which is what he has kind of done in spades lately this year.
Yeah, as a Brees owner, he's one I am I'm pulling the panic lever on Brees more so than Bijan. Part of that's the
Yeah.
offense. Their offensive line looks awful. Aaron Rodgers doesn't
Yep.
look good. You've also got Braylon Allen, a guy who looks pretty darn good, sitting right behind you. Where even if this offense does get going, you have to worry about him losing touches. Brees only with 12 total touches this week, not really able to do much with them. I don't know that switching out Saleh like you said, is going to help. If you're not changing offensive coordinators, are we really fixing the problems here? So if I'm a Brees owner, I'm looking for trades. I don't know how much value you're going to get out of him at this point, but you got to be looking to do something because I can't really roll with him as my running back one and expect any real major production in fantasy. So as a Brees owner, I think he might be my top pull the panic lever. What can we do here, guy, this week? Before we move on to betting, though, we got one last bit of breaking news or injury news. Texans are saying Nico Collins is day to day with his hamstring injury, could play this week, so that might not be as big of a knock as some people were afraid of. You got to be happy about that if you're a Nico Collins owner. It might save you a wide receiver one going forward, right?
Absolutely.
So, moving on to week 6, we're going to talk about our betting angle, some of our top games this week, give you our picks. Let's start off 49ers at the Seahawks. Big divisional battle. 49ers have been struggling here the first few weeks. Seahawks actually looking like one of the better teams in the league and have been completely solid. Seahawks are actually the underdogs in this game at home, giving up 3.5 points to the Niners. Who are you taking in this game?
My brain and the smart rational choice is to take the 49ers. I think they have a bounce back they should say they have a bounce back week after that. I think they're going to involve Debo and manufacture more touches for him this week to help out with the Jordan Mason was kind of a follower we didn't talk about a little bit, but you know what? It's not all about the brain. I'm going with my heart here, and I like what the Seahawks are doing. So I'm gonna take I'm gonna take the Seahawks. Their offensive line is a problem, and I knew it was gonna be a problem this year. The Giants just absolutely blew them up. They have one of the better D line overall in the league right now. And while the 49ers D line is solid, I think the Seahawks have a bounce back game even more than the 49ers. So I like the Seahawks to outright win this game.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to take the 49ers here. The Seahawks didn't look great last week again against the Giants. What are they going to do against the 49ers defense? Now, the 49ers offense right now looks like a problem after coming out to a 26-10 halftime lead this week. the 49ers period scored 0 points in the second half against a Cardinals defense that has been suspect at best. So the 49ers definitely with some kinks to iron out. That being said, I feel like they usually get the best of the Seahawks. I think the Niners are going to be raring and needing this game. I'm taking the Niners here, but I do think it's going to be close. Another big game this week. I think this might be for one of the top spots in our power rankings going forward. The Commanders going to Baltimore. Baltimore coming off a couple big wins here. Washington's looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. Can Jaden take this show on the road and put up a win in Baltimore?
I love this game, man. I got it slated. I'm excited to watch this game. And I mean, Jaden looks is the closest thing to look like Lamar. So, I mean, it's going to be so fun to do this. And Washington's defense has taken a lot of heat, and for good reason. They're still not very good, but Baltimore's defense is kind of running under the radar for how bad they've been. I kind of mentioned earlier 25 plus points in 4 games. Only the Carolina Panthers have been that bad. So I think this is going to be a high scoring affair. I mean, you got to take Baltimore, but 6.5 points does seem high. So I'm not, I'm gonna take Washington here, but Baltimore to win the game.
I'm gonna take Washington here, especially with the 6.5 points. But I think Jaden, this will be his big come out party. I think he wins this game, and I think moves into the top of
Uh,
the MVP conversation. And we're starting to look at the Redskins as an actual deep postseason threat going forward. I'm gonna take the rookie on the road. Another big game, a divisional battle, one I know you look forward to twice a year, every year. Tampa Bay on the road to play the hated Saints. Tampa Bay favored by 2. I'm going to guess you're taking your boys here, Rob. What's the story?
Well, all things being fair, I actually think we have a better team overall, but that's not the only reason why I'm taking us this game. I mean, Derek Carr just left with an oblique injury. This narrative is going to be about injuries a little bit because our team has been so decimated by injuries throughout this first quarter of the year, and we're about to get a bunch of pieces back. We're about to get our starting right tackle, Antoine Winfield Jr., our pass rushing DT, Kalijah Cansey. We haven't had any of these guys for the majority of the year, so we're about to get all these guys back as Derek Carr is questionable to even play, and if he does play, you know that oblique injury is not going to feel good. So, I mean, I think that line at +2 is actually going to get bigger, and I don't know how big it'll get, but I will say I'm absolutely taking Tampa Bay at +2 on this. I'm laying the points at +2 on the line, and I might even, depending on how big the line gets, I'll take it then too.
I'm with you. I'm taking Tampa, especially no car for this game. I don't think New Orleans is going to be able to hang in there. Not with the rejuvenation of Baker and the Bucks offense here. I think Tampa wins it. We got a big historical battle. We've got Detroit going to Dallas. Detroit favored by 3. Dallas has been struggling. Can Detroit keep it rolling, or is Dallas able to get right in this game?
I like Detroit after a bye week here. They've had rest, get those guys that are a little nicked up back and in the game, feeling good. And Ben Johnson's a good offensive coordinator. So anytime you have a good offensive coordinator, that bye week's going to help. He's going to scheme some stuff up, and I expect a big game from those weapons.
Yeah, I'm going to take Detroit as well. Like you said, coming off a bye week, I think they've had plenty of time to sit and watch Dallas and get ready for this game. Dallas has been shaky so far. I don't expect that to end. I think this game's probably been circled on Detroit's calendar for a long time. I think the Lions are going to come out and put on a show and even cover the spread there. And then we've got one more big one. This would be the Monday night game. The Buffalo Bills coming off a disappointing loss to the Texans that they had in the bag. Now they're going on the road to play their in-state, in-division rival, the Jets, who will be coming in with a new coach, new look. I know it's early. We just got this news about the Jets, but do they have a chance here to come in and make a statement versus the Bills, or is this Bills team just going to run through a team that's obviously struggling and transitioning?
One thing we didn't talk about between the Bills and the Bucks is like coaching negligence to lose the game. Same in a little bit of the Jaguars Colts situation, but yeah, the Bills totally blew that game, only more than I think my Bucks did this last weekend. But um, this will be an interesting game to watch because to see how the Jets come out will say a lot about the things that we can't possibly know in that building when it led to Saleh's firing and stuff like that. So we'll see if the team comes out hot and maybe Saleh and there were background friction that was kind of affecting everybody. We'll see. And if they come out flat again, then you got to start looking at Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett again, you know? But I'm going to go ahead and take the Bills in this one. Last week they were without Khalil Shakir. I think he comes back. Keon Coleman, he had that big touchdown, and while he's still raw in my opinion, and he's not a great separator, he I think he'll be serviceable. The engine of that offense though is James Cook and Khalil Shakir, and they obviously missed him this last week, so he comes back, and I like the Bills in this game.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bills here. I don't didn't trust the Jets before. I'm certainly not trusting them now, coming on a week of a coaching change. And the Bills, I think, have got to be mad about that Houston game. I think they're going to come out firing. So I'll take the Bills there. Let's go through some quick hits real quick on some of these other games. Jaguars at the Bears in London. Can the Bears get a big London win? And do both coaches make it back alive?
I think this is an underrated. I think this is an underrated matchup. I like this potential, especially with Jaguars kind of on a little hot streak and the Bears on a hot streak. So these are two teams heating up. Um, I'm actually going to take the Jaguars. Ingram comes back. Now this Chicago's defense is for real, but Ingram's going to come back, and I like the trajectory the Jaguars are on. They're finding their identity now. So are the Bears. But I think Tank Bigsby and Ingram coming back and Kirk. I think this is going to be a good performance by the Jaguars offense this week.
I'm going Bears here. I think the Bears win, and I don't know if the Jaguars coach comes back on the plane. I think that might be another coaching switch coming out of London this week. How
It's
about
definitely a possibility.
Cardinals going to Green Bay to play the Packers?
I think the Green Bay is going to take this one. Love's got to figure out the first half. It can't come out so flat, but I don't see Wicks dropping as many balls. Dobbs is coming back. Josh Jacobs is their main guy, and I think what's not really being talked about, and we didn't mention him, was Marvin Harrison Jr. still going through some rookie struggles. He hasn't really come out the gate like that super fast. So I'm seeing Arizona kind of struggle right now with inconsistency. So I'm gonna go ahead and who are they playing?
You're going to take the Packers. I'm going to take the
Yeah, I'm
Cardinals
gonna go ahead and
here.
take the
I'm
Packers.
going to
I
take the
apologize.
Cardinals
Yeah.
here, coming off momentum of the
Oh
last
wow.
big game. What about the Colts Titans? Colts still rolling with Flacco that we know of. Can the Titans get anything together? Who are you taking there?
I'm gonna take an upset here. I think Anthony Richardson is gonna come back, but I'm gonna take an upset and take the Titans after a bye week. I think they're gonna figure out that they gotta target their top two receivers and stop messing around with like 3 targets twice in a row to Calvin Ridley. So I'm gonna take the Titans coming out of a bye week to surprise people in a year that's had a ton of upsets.
I'm going to go with the Colts here. Flacco hopefully stays in, but even with Richardson, I think they can take care of the Titans. Texans, Patriots. I'm going to go ahead and venture here and say we're both probably taking the Texans. The Patriots have one of the worst offenses I've seen in modern NFL history. I'm going Texans. How about you?
Agreed.
We talked about Bucks Saints. How about Browns Eagles? Two teams both look like they're kind of struggling. I'm gonna go ahead and take the Eagles here. Put the Browns in the category of lost causes.
Yeah, most likely the wide receivers are coming back for the Eagles, so I mean it's a pretty easy pick for me. Saquon and the Eagles.
All right. What about interdivisional rivalry here? Chargers Broncos. Chargers coming off a bye week. Broncos coming off a big win. Which team has the upper hand?
The Broncos defense has been absolutely on fire. I think they've overtaken the Steelers as the best defense, but you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take the Chargers. Harbaugh's earned the trust, and Herbert's had some time to kind of get back from that gimpy ankle, so I'm gonna take the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chargers too, coming off the bye week there. Steelers Raiders classic rivalry. Steelers coming off that tough loss in Dallas. Do they get together and beat the Raiders?
Yeah, the defense is the best unit in the game. I'm gonna go ahead and take that. Although I do think the Raiders are gonna be rejuvenated under Aiden O'Connell. And I like Brock Bowers in that game.
I'm going to go ahead and take the Raiders here. I think the Steelers have been living on the edge of the knife. I think the Raiders might pull one out in a close, low scoring battle. And then we
I
got
like that pick.
The Falcons Panthers. Falcons coming off a huge game. Panthers offense looking better. Team still not so much. I'm going to take the Falcons here.
I'm going to take the Panthers with an upset here. I think the
Oh,
Falcons are going to have a letdown after an emotional game that they shouldn't have won. And I like what the Panthers are doing. I think that they're a solid team, better with Andy Dalton than anything else. Now their defense is still a mess, so it's possible Kirk has another great game, but Falcons defense isn't there either. So I'm gonna take another upset here and go with the Panthers.
All right, and then last but not least, the Bengals at 1-4, heading to play the Giants at 2-3. I'm gonna go with the Bengals here to get things back on track. The Giants have looked better, but the Bengals are desperate. I'm gonna vote for desperate. I'm gonna say the Bengals take this
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but Zach Moss has an ankle injury, but Chase Brown has stepped in really nicely for him and a guy I was high on going into the year. And Burrow's figured it out. He's lightened defenses up. So as long as Cincinnati doesn't have another crazy collapse to Daniel Jones, I think it's Bengals are a safe pick here.
one. I love that. Well, that wraps it up for our picks of the week, and that is gonna wrap it up for our Week 6 preview here on the Winning Play podcast. It's been nice having you join us. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on all socials at the Winning Play Pod. For Rob Hugh, I'm Drew James. Go out there and make some winning plays, and we'll see you next week. Take care.